What would happen if the world had an official capital? Clearly, the planet we live on does not have a shared capital. But if we were forced to choose one, let's assume it would be New York. So why this city? Let's explore what makes New York so special and examine which other cities might compete with it. There is no need for much introduction, and it is perhaps the most famous city in the world. In a hypothetical scenario, it could be a reasonable answer to the question of which place could serve as the capital of the planet. However, New York City is not the capital of its own country. In fact, it is not even the capital of the state it belongs to. Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States, and Albany is the capital of the state of New York. So what reasons lead us to believe that New York City could be considered a world capital? Let's think about what criteria might be useful for this imaginary election. The first criterion is related to scale. The capital of the world cannot be a small town. It must be a large metropolitan area with a dense population. Clearly, New York meets this requirement. With 8.8 million residents, it is the most populous city in the United States, the world's largest economy. Moreover, if we consider the entire metropolitan area, the figure reaches 21.5 million people, ranking 12th globally. The second criterion is somewhat more subjective, but we believe there is little room for doubt. It must be a place that is widely recognized across the globe. It is hard to imagine any city more famous than New York. In fact, even its abbreviation is enough for people to recognize it. For the third criterion, there is certainly no debate. It must be a hub of commercial activity and stock markets, as well as the headquarters of major international companies. Few places are more symbolic of this than Wall Street, so this requirement is also fulfilled. Another factor to consider is the presence of an airport that functions as a major international hub. JFK Airport is the most famous in the city, but it is not the only one. Including Newark, LaGuardia, and 4 smaller airports, the New York metropolitan area has the busiest airport system in the United States. Globally, only London surpasses it. Closely related to this is the need for an advanced and well-connected transportation system. Trains, subways, buses, highways, and many other modes of transport form a vast network in the Big Apple. The next factor to consider is internationalization. And in this respect, New York seems to have no rival. Hundreds of languages and nationalities coexist daily in the city. No fewer than 36% of residents were born abroad, a higher proportion than in any other major city in the world. This is not a recent development. For more than 2 centuries, the city has been open to immigration and shaped by a wide variety of cultures and traditions. Thanks to its seaport, the city has always looked outward and remained connected to the rest of the world. In this regard, its cultural aspect is equally strong. The city is home to globally renowned museums, galleries, and festivals. Places such as MoMA, the American Museum of Natural History, Madison Square Garden, and Broadway are all part of its identity. Finally, a world capital must have influence and participation in major international events, as well as serve as the headquarters for international organizations. In this regard, the United Nations headquarters is located in New York. As for world-class sporting events, although it has not hosted the Olympic Games, it was a venue for the 1994 World Cup, and moreover, the next final will also take place there. Technically, it is in New Jersey, but MetLife Stadium is only 8 kilometers from New York, so it can be considered part of the same metropolitan area. These 8 criteria are not something we invented ourselves. They come from researchers who analyze the concept of the global city, that is, what makes an urban center an important actor in world affairs. The point is that in every case, New York meets the requirements. However, the issue is that it may not be the only city capable of doing so. To find out which other cities are equally qualified, we can refer to existing rankings to see where our candidate stands and whether anyone might have an advantage. For example, the Global Cities Index by Oxford Economics evaluates the 1,000 largest urban economies in the world. In this list, New York ranks first. The report highlights it as the economic capital of the United States and, in many respects, of the world. It is followed by London and Paris. We can also look at research by the Globalization and World Cities Research Network. Only two urban centers achieved the highest ranking, New York and London. The latest report by the consulting firm Kearney also places New York at the top. This report particularly emphasizes business activity, human capital, and information exchange. Following are London, Paris, Tokyo, and Singapore. Another study by Ipsos and Resonance on the best cities in the world shows New York ranking near the top, just behind London. The top 5 also include Paris, Tokyo, and Madrid. Finally, there is another Global Cities Index. In this list, New York ranks 3rd behind London and Tokyo, followed by Paris and Singapore. After reviewing these rankings, with New York consistently appearing at or near the top, we can justify selecting it as the world capital. At the same time, several other cities frequently appear in high positions, such as London, Tokyo, and Paris. These are perhaps the strongest contenders for the title of Global City. For example, in comparison, there are areas where New York clearly excels, particularly in finance and economics, where it stands out due to its immense level of production and exchange. It also ranks first if we consider a global city as a miniature version of the world. New York represents an extraordinary diversity of cultures and traditions, to the point that it is hard to imagine a more diverse place. Even in terms of culture, its influence is immense. Surely all of us can recall a film or series set there. However, there are also areas where it falls somewhat short. For example, in terms of political centrality. Although it hosts the United Nations headquarters, major decisions of the United States are made in Washington, D.C. In other major powers, Moscow, Beijing, and London stand out more prominently. Regarding multilateral institutions, Brussels can be mentioned, as it hosts the headquarters of the European Union and NATO. New York is also not among the cities with the highest quality of life or livability. Ultimately, everything depends on which criteria we prioritize in choosing a capital. If we consider political and military power to be the most important, we would choose Washington, D.C. If we value population and technological innovation, Tokyo would be a major contender. If we emphasize cultural influence and tourism, Paris could compete. And if we evaluate all criteria comprehensively, the strongest rival is likely London. However, after considering everything, New York seems to embody all the elements of a global city. If an extraterrestrial visitor arrived and wanted to understand a city that represents Earth, we would probably direct them to JFK Airport. Finally, we may ask whether in the past any city could have been considered a world capital. Essentially, the answer is probably no. Connectivity and communication have only truly exploded in the past 2 centuries. Before that, large cities may have existed, but their influence was regional rather than global. The only possible case that meets some of the criteria is Rome. During its golden age, it had immense influence over the known world. However, the world at that time was still highly fragmented. Europeans were not even aware of the existence of the Americas, making it very difficult to speak of a true global city. Later, during the Industrial Revolution, London played the role of the world center. However, in the early 20th century, a major rival began to emerge, and according to our criteria, eventually surpassed it. What do you think? Would you choose New York as the capital of Earth, or would you pick another city?